Return of the Mount Hua Sect. Chapter 235. What is with that one? Yunjong gulped. A lot of people were now suddenly looking at him. This included the Lord, his men, and the guards. His legs felt wobbly. At that moment, the roaring voice of the Lord reached his ears. I heard you used all your money to help the poor in Kunming. Yunjong nodded. He knew that even if he tried to speak, his voice wouldn't come out. Why? The Beast Palace Lord asked him a stupefying question. You are a person of the Central Plains. You came here on a mission. But why did you decide to do that? Standing out wouldn't be good, right? Yunjong shut his mouth. He had already talked about this with Jogul, but now he might have to tell a different story. With his eyes closed and his thoughts organized, Yunjong raised his head and looked at the Lord. I don't quite understand the meaning of the question. I asked, why did you do that? I still do not understand. Yunjong stopped trembling. Then he took a deep breath and looked forward. Does a person need a reason to help others? The Beast Palace Lord flinched slightly as he heard this unexpected answer. It doesn't matter whether we are from Yunnan or the Central Plains. If there is someone in front of me who needs help, I will help them. Seeing Yunjong speaking confidently, Chongmyung whispered to Jogul. I think that was too much. Way too much. These bastards. Yunjong coughed as he heard their words and immediately looked forward again. Then are you saying that you will do the same thing the next time you're in such a situation? No. Yunjong shook his head. The way of the Tao does not work like that. The Tao is called the Tao only when it happens by coincidence. If the circumstance and the people who is helping others change, how can the same situation happen? I just do what my heart tells me to do. What your heart tells you to. The Lord's lips turned to a slight smile. So that means that you just wanted to help at that moment and therefore did. Yes, even by selling your sword. Why do people keep talking about the sword? I am reflecting on it. You regret it. I regret it, but at the same time, I don't. Yunjong proudly spoke. Then the Lord tilted his head and asked, Strange words. What does that mean? Yunjong stayed silent for a while, and after he finished organizing his thoughts, he opened his mouth again. It is something I should reflect on. My reckless actions led to the endangerment of my sayongs and sajes. I deserve to be blamed for that. Yunjong closed his eyes and then spoke again as he looked at the Lord. Mount Hua is my everything. This is why I do not regret what I did. And Mount Hua is a place that values the well-being of the starving more than that of a sword. At least, that is how I have learned. Even if it goes against your teachings. How can Mount Hua teach that swords are more important than dying people? Yunjong's voice gradually began to get filled with anger as he spoke. Do you think a Taoist is someone who climbs mountains and talks about Tao when he is ultimately a selfish man who ignores the winds and waves that keeps crashing onto the world for his own comfort? No, that is why we explore the world. The Tao is not the heart that goes out for people, but rather it is the hands and feet that give them the ability to move. Yunjong's voice resounded clearly in everyone's ears. If it was the sect leader here, I know that he would have sold everything on him along with his own sword to help the people. Of course, the glory of Mount Hua is important. However, if it isn't going to lead us to helping the lives of people, then what is that glory for? To enjoy the advantages of being a Taoist? Gradually, he stood tall in front of the crushing pressure of the Beast Palace Lord. All delusions broke inside him as he established himself. I had been thinking all this time, why did it have to be Mount Hua? Why is Mount Hua seeking its former glory? Do you know the answer I found? What is it? There is no reason for it at all. It was certainly a weird answer. However, Yunjong spoke with certainty. If there is no reason, then we have to create the reason. If the glory of Mount Hua made it easier for those living in the world to have a good life, all the disciples of Mount Hua would be proud of it. But that is Mount Hua. As long as it stays in the shade, Mount Hua will continue to help and follow the teachings of the Tao. We will do that regardless of whether we get replaced by another sect at any time. Yunjong spoke firmly. It was the answer to the question he had been asking himself for a long time, and that answer was now communicated. I will make Mount Hua into an irreplaceable place. I will make it a place where everyone in the world can rejoice in the glory of Mount Hua. That is what it means to be a disciple of Mount Hua. The Lord trembled. How was he this? Resolution. This wasn't a matter of right or wrong. This child understands what he had to do with his role as a warrior and what he had to pursue to be called Taoist at the same time. Could anyone in the palace be remotely insightful as this child is? Mount Hua, the sect which produced the Plum Blossom Sword Saint. They only heard of the greatness of the sword. But, right, Mount Hua is the Taoist sect. Mount Hua was a martial sect that went beyond pursuing the way of the Tao, and this child was following it to the extent that even the elders of the palace bowed their heads to him. The Lord closed his eyes. He too avoided the chaos that was present in his reality, without being embarrassed, and he opened his eyes. Listen, people! Yes! From this moment on, none of the merchants of the Central Plains will be given rights to enter Yunnan. Yes! From now on, all trade between Yunnan and the Central Plains will be through Mount Hua. Lord! Think again! Shut up! The Lord let out a roar. Are you going to embarrass me? Someone who had no relationship with Yunnan sold his sword to feed our poor. Are you saying that I, a palace lord, should turn away such people when they are in need? The palace lord yelled loudly. It showed how angry he was. Is there anything wrong with what they said? Do we have to make our people starve because of our ancestors? If we do that, we do not respect the people who built this place. People are always more precious than the will of the dead. All the people bowed their heads. Even though they were from here, why didn't they have a heart for the people of Yunnan? At that time, the guardian in the front bowed and said, Let us do that, my lord. I will be the first to meet our ancestors in the underworld. If all it takes is insulting me in exchange for the people of Yunnan being happy, is there a problem with that? First Guardian, it has been a long time, such a long time. I think we have done enough. We are old and ignorant, and we do not know what is right anymore. The disciples of Mount Hua has made me realize this. I was chasing after something in vain. The Lord nodded. Listen. Yes, Lord. I will not allow any more disagreement. If you recognize me as the Lord of the Beast Palace and respect my authority, do not complain about this. I will give Mount Hua the sole right to trade with us. We heed your command. All the people knelt down in unison. Mengso looked around at everyone as he descended the stairs, and he walked to where Chongmeng and Yunjong were with a smile. I have nothing else to give but my thanks. It was nothing. I'm glad it worked out. Hearing Chongmeng's words, he smiled and nodded. We accepted the descendants of the Plum Blossom Sword Saint as our honored guests. But from this moment, I recognize you not as his descendants, but as the disciples of Mount Hua and friends of our Beast Palace. None among you will be discriminated against again in here. Baekchun moved forward. Chongmeng and Yunjong retreated to the left and right, and Baekchun took the center. On behalf of Mount Hua, I give my thanks. It is fine, really. The Lord looked up at the sky. He stared at the blazing sun above Yunnan for a while before lowering his head. Then he grabbed Chongmyung's hand and said, "You really did well." "I think we did well coming to Yunnan." Baekchun smiled and nodded his head. This time, the Lord turned to Yunjong. "And, disciple Yunjong." "Yes, Lord. I have learned a lot from disciple Yunjong. Although I am a warrior, I do not know of the Tao or what exactly right and wrong is, but at least I can rest assured that Mount Hua still holds on to the Tao. It is a bit embarrassing. Please stop by Yunnan from time to time and teach us. I am a young disciple who is still learning. Compared to the elders and sect leader of Mount Hua, my Tao is nothing." "Then I should come to visit the sect leader. I surely cannot request him to come this far." With a proud face, the Lord smiled and slammed Chongmyung on the shoulder with his hand. "Mount Hua has the Tao in martial arts, so it will not be long before its former glory is restored. Can the Beast Palace be by its side?" "Ah, you will have a hard time though." "What?" The Lord once again slammed Chongmyung on the shoulders as he laughed. "I will die like this." "Ah, right." Chongmyung, who had been buried into the ground until his knees, lifted himself up and then grumbled. "Anyway, things have all been resolved here, and the contract has also been made. So, adhere to the content." "That is an obvious thing." "Right, I believe in you, since we are friends." "Right, friend." The two held each other's hands as they smiled at each other. "Yes, do you want to rest for a few days? The time has come for the peach extract to ripen again." Sure sounds tasty, but I have to head back now." "Already?" "Yes, there are people waiting for us to come back." Chongmyung tilted his head and looked back. "It has been a long time, and I miss it already. The mountain slope, the incense lit up in the altar hall, the laughter of the elders as they smiled. A disciple of Mount Hua cannot survive for long without Mount Hua. We need to leave now." "A pity." "Don't worry, we'll come see you again. If there is a problem here, come see us right away." So reassuring. All the disciples of Mount Hua greeted the Lord, who had carried all their bags on his shoulder until they reached the gate of the palace. At that moment, "The guests are leaving." Thud, 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 thud. All the guards lined up there began to stomp their feet on the ground. It was so strong that it felt like the ground beneath their feet was shaking. "The Beast Palace will never forget its friends." They all roared at the top of their lungs. The images of the people doing that were clearly etched in their eyes. The disciples of Mount Hua were slightly moved by the kind of emotions they felt. When they came in, they were caught, but now they were leaving as friends. "Let's meet again!" Baekchun shouted loudly and began to move. After turning around, he wiped off the slightest resentment that was in his heart. It was a good farewell, and there was no reason to regret it since they would meet again. So, let's head back to our Mount Hua that has been waiting for us.